Earth Station 1, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things sci-fi, fantasy, and much, much more. Sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
Hey there, Station 1 listeners. Welcome to another episode. This is a good one. This is a throwback review that we've been trying to get more and more on the show because, or as we like to call it, Educating Ashley. And it's going to be a great series of films that we're going to be talking about, spaced out throughout the year and everything. And, you know, we're just going to be trying to show movies to Ashley that are considered classics in a lot of ways, but, you know, she hasn't seen yet. And she has a vast knowledge. So don't think that she hasn't seen anything from, you know, only like the late 90s up and everything. So she actually has a great knowledge of it, and that's why she is our favorite movie reviewer here on the network. So it's pretty awesome to say. But we are going to be looking at the 1976 classic starring Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. We are looking at Silver Streak. That's right, the first time they teamed up together, and it is a ton of fun to talk about. And we have a great crew to talk about, of course. Mr. Mike Gordon is here.
Howdy.
You ready for this one, sir?
I am. I've been ready. I've been waiting for a long time.
Since 1976 to talk about it?
No, because I probably didn't see it in the theater, but I'm sure we'll talk more about all that later.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. And of course, Ashley Pauls is here.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. And it's always fun to take a break from all the movies coming out in theaters and revisit something that is from the past, because there are plenty of great movies out there. And I know sometimes it's hard to keep up with all the new things coming out. So it's nice to take a chance and give some love to older movies too.
It's almost like a breath of fresh air. It's like something, you know, it's nice to take a break and do something a little different, as I like to say. And of course, Mary Ogle is here. We haven't had Mary on for a bit, so it'd be nice to have her on.
Yeah, it's been a while. Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to talking about this one. I definitely did not see it in the theaters.
No, I
was
think this
11.
This one had to be an HBO movie for me, or so, I think. And
I think I probably saw this on TV.
Just TV, yeah.
So, you know, like I said, my parents stuck us in front of the TV when growing up, and HBO was my babysitter at the time. So if it was on, I watched it. And I think this definitely was one of those. All right. Definitely would love to hear from you guys at home. Please write us feedback@earthstation1.com. Let us know what you guys thought about this movie. Have you ever seen it before? What are your thoughts on this one? And this one led into quite a few films that Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder teamed up on afterwards. And so it's pretty awesome to, you know, see this and everything. So definitely would love to hear from you guys at home. And, you know, if you get a chance, like and subscribe over on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this. Give us feedback. We'd love to do it. Or just give us a thumbs up, as we like to say. It's always good. All right, Mr. Mike, you ready to take us away?
I am. And as usual, we begin with the box office. This movie did really well. It grossed over 51 million at the box office, which right now, I mean, that's like an afternoon for a Marvel movie. But I mean, back then in 1976, I mean, the movie only cost $5 or $6 million to make. So, I mean, it really was a big return on investment, and it really was a huge hit for Gene Wilder. And as we've mentioned, it was the first team up of Wilder and Pryor, who went on to make 3 other movies and start a wonderful collaboration together. So, anyway, so we already established that none of us were old enough to see it in the theater. Ashley, had you even heard of this movie before, or were you aware of it, or what were your impressions going in before you started watching this?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had heard of it in some context or other, but I really didn't know that much about it before sitting down to watch it. So it was kind of interesting to go in pretty much completely blind. Before I started watching it, for whatever reason, I'd assumed it was going to be more like a Mel Brooks, like over the top comedy. And there are some comedy elements, but there's also some like thriller action moments too. So that kind of caught me by surprise, but was definitely fun to see Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor together, and just the chemistry. I think the best parts of the movie when they're playing off each other. I don't know that this is necessarily my most favorite classic movie that we've revisited, but still definitely interesting to watch and discuss. So yeah, definitely still worth my time to watch it, and looking forward to chatting more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Were you familiar with Wilder and Pryor either individually or together?
Yes. Yeah. I had really enjoyed seeing like some of Mel Brooks's films and just how funny those are, and seeing I had seen Gene Wilder in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So yeah, was familiar with him. So I think he and Richard Pryor are definitely the best parts of this film, just like his comedic timing, the way he delivers lines, and he was just a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, well, we'll definitely get into more of that. Mary, what about you? What's your history with this movie?
Yeah, I definitely didn't see it when it first came out. I'm sure I saw it probably as a teenager when it got replayed, or in my early 20s when it got replayed on some network TV station. Yeah, I probably the first time I probably saw Richard Pryor was on Saturday Night Live, with the Exorcist sketch and the
which is so
employment
awesome.
interview
That was
sketch,
so
which are
awesome.
yes, those are classic. I mean, yeah, if anybody hasn't seen them, go back and watch them I'm sure they're on YouTube or whatever. But yeah, I didn't remember actually much about this movie, and it was less of a comedy and more of a thriller than I remembered. But I mean that works actually. They I think those elements work well together. But I mean, it's definitely dated, and there's definitely
very
some
much
problematic moments in it.
Yeah, I was like, are we sure this is PG?
Mhm. Well,
Yeah.
some of the language, some of the blackface alone, and then also, of course, just some of the language even from Ned Beatty that he was using on, of course, on Jill Clayburne's character and
Well,
everything when
they
at the
haul
bar.
off and slug her.
Yeah. Oh, big
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And that is
So,
not addressed at all. I mean, they just haul off and hit her and then they move on.
Mike, before we get into all that, because yeah, there's a lot to unpack there too. Product of its time for sure.
very much so.
But Mike, why you're the one who chose this and selected this one as a must view for Ashley, and why was that?
It was interesting because I chose this for Ashley because it has been copied so many times since. It was the beginning of a trope of films, with, it was not a comedy. It was not even billed as a comedy. It was more of an, action adventure type film. God, how many times was Gene Wilder thrown off that damn train? And, and so it was just interesting to see. And I thought the chemistry between, Jill Clayburne and Gene Wilder, and then of course when Richard Pryor joined in this, was just amazing. And they worked so well together. And I thought this would be great because if you think about it, this was 1976. This was also around the era of the big disaster movies and, the huge adventures. Like you had French Connection, you had Poseidon Adventure, Towering Inferno, the Irwin Allen stuff, or you also had all the different airplane movies, airport movies. Sorry, airplane came later,
Yeah,
but
totally different things.
Exactly. But it was interesting, and it fit into that genre because they even did, spin-offs of, like, parodies of this, like The Big Bus and stuff like that, and Super Train and all this kind of crazy stuff. And I'm a big fan of the ending when the train crashes into the train station and everything, which
yeah,
was
that always
pretty
reminds
amazing.
me of Airplane.
Yeah.
The
When the airplane crashes
into
in.
Yeah.
Oh, that's where they got it from. And it's just awesome. And you also have, and the characters in this movie are just awesome. And it has, Scatman Crothers. It's pretty, you can't beat that. So it's pretty cool. So that's the main reason I chose this. And like I said earlier, the first time I saw this probably was late 70s, early 80s on HBO, and fell in love with it and everything. But it's interesting, how we're saying this is the first time that Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder worked together. They actually worked together on another project that, a little bit of trivia here. They actually worked together on Blazing Saddles, because Richard Pryor was one of the writers on Blazing Saddles.
That's true.
And he was actually supposed to originally be, Bart in it.
Yep. Yeah.
So it was interesting. And so you already had the relationship with Gene Wilder. And so I thought it was a perfect fit.
Yeah. It's funny because Pryor was cast before Wilder.
Mm-hmm.
It was supposed to be Pryor and I can't remember the name of the actor's name that was supposed to be in the lead, but he would show up on set drunk. So, so Mel reached out to Gene and said, "Could you come down here and film this movie with me?" And he's like, "Sure." So yeah. I don't know exactly how much they interacted on that though, because my understanding was Richard Pryor's work was always already done before they even started shooting that. So I don't know if Pryor was actually on set for that, but I mean, I'm sure they were aware of each other.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because at this point, Richard Pryor is still a pretty decent. I mean, he's a big name, even though he doesn't appear in this until about an hour into the movie. He still gets like third build. Like he's like right there in the main cast. So, and I think I saw this movie. Yeah, I think I saw it on TV. And looking back on it now, I think most of the things that are in this movie, since it's PG, were aired on TV. I would not be surprised if, the use of the N-word and all that kind of stuff was still in when I was watching it on TV, because at that point, I don't think in the 70s and early 80s, I don't think they had really put a kibosh on that sort of language on TV.
They would not use the N-word on TV at that point.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they cut it out.
Yeah.
I'm not as certain. I mean, obviously there was the example, exceptions to the rule, like Roots and everything. But because I know that wasn't edited for TV. I mean, edited in the same way.
It was made for TV, Roots, but also they ran disclaimers about language and nudity and such before, because the African scenes, there was, topless women, or that there's scenes with rape and such in Roots. And so I remember as a kid watching it, because it was required watching for school, and they actually had the disclaimers on it, the program you're about to watch type thing. So if they played this or something, something on it like that, I'm sure things were bleeped, at least.
It's possible, because I mean, if certainly on a major network, ABC or an NBC film, something that would be. But if I saw it on like channel 38, a UHF channel, I'm not so sure. I can remember watching Deer Hunter on a channel like that, and that was not edited very much at all. So that traumatized me as a kid. I was way too young to be watching Deer Hunter. But I don't remember. I mean, I wouldn't have been too young to watch this. I mean, this is really enjoyable. I think it's, I dare say all ages, but I mean, it's obviously not for little bitty kids. And there's a lot of stuff in here that is, now looking back on it now, is problematic and whatnot. But I mean, it is fun. It is an adventure. It is sort of like it's like a Hitchcockian movie. I mean, the plot and everything is very much like, it's not the first ever train murder mystery, but it's certainly one that's in the top, I would say 5 or 10 when people talk about train mysteries. Very has a similar plot to Lady Vanishes, which is an early Hitchcock movie that he made in Britain, where a passenger disappears, that everybody is that only one person realizes it's a different person and everything like that. So the plot's very similar, but then it goes in a lot of different ways, and it's got some Gene Wilder humor in it. It is interesting to me that Gene is like this leading man kind of guy, because he's not exactly Cary Grant, right?
Oh, definitely not.
But you remember in the 70s, guys like Gene Wilder, Woody Allen were like sex symbols. It's true, Ashley. I know you're smiling.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd agree with that about Woody Allen, but
Yeah, I
it's
don't know
maybe Gene Wilder.
I mean, you look at you look at the movies he was in, and he's always like,
Yeah, that's because he cast himself in the movies. He's
not
directing
just the
them.
movies
They're
that he
his
wrote and
movies.
directed, but other movies that he did as well. If you look at him in Casino Royale, for example, I mean, he and yes, he had, I mean, I will say that I think that there was something in the water there. I don't know. And then with Richard Pryor, I also think I mean, I've watched a lot of like movies, the blaxploitation movies that were made during this time too, and Richard Pryor kind of brings that element to this movie as well, which is kind of fun. So I think it's a solid movie for sure, and I haven't watched it in a long time,
Oh,
maybe
it's been
over
at least
20
25
years.
years. It's been at least 25 years since I've seen this last. And
Yeah.
it was just as enjoyable as I remember. But let's talk to the newbie. Let's get her point of view as far.
Absolutely, Ashley. What's something significant you noticed about the movie, either plus or minus?
Yeah, well, I always love a good thriller set on a train. I love trains myself, so I wish there were more movies like this. I enjoyed seeing like Murder on the Orient Express and Bullet Train, like using this because you have the idea of all these people are kind of trapped in this one space for a certain amount of time. So you have like the tension there and the setting, and I kind of like the idea of blending something that's both a comedy and a thriller. Like there is some moments where you feel like Gene Wilder's character is in danger, but then there are also some laughs, again with the bit like where he keeps getting thrown off the train again and again and again, then ends up at the farm and just trying to like get help from all these different places to go help this woman that he just met kind of with on the train. A little bit of a James Bond meeting someone on a train and just like sparks flying. So yeah, it was interesting to watch that, and then just fun to see Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor's chemistry. I was kind of surprised with Richard Pryor not showing up until about halfway through the movie. They really make you wait for him, but he is worth the wait. And again, like I kind of wish there would have been even more scenes with the two of them together. And one thing that also struck me was cool to see the score by Henry Mancini. He's always welcome to hear music from him. But yeah, just fascinating to watch this for the first time here in 2023, and some of the jokes and like cultural elements that would never be put in a movie today. And I think those are definitely good like conversation starters. Like obviously blackface is something that would never be done in a movie today, is rightly considered to be offensive. And I was wondering, like, are the directors aware that it's offensive and they're using it like as a commentary on how it's offensive, or were they just being tone deaf? So it's interesting. Sometimes there's a lot you can dive into with intent of the creatives behind it. But I think that is one of the valuable things about watching older movies, is having some of these conversations about how we've changed culturally, and just kind of bringing up some of these different topics surrounding artistic expression.
Yeah. I mean, I think back then it was probably more tone deaf.
Yeah,
that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, I doubt that they were doing that ironically, or in any way aware that it was offensive, or that they cared that it was offensive.
Well, there is a story about the making of it, that the scene where Grover puts on the shoe polish on George, Richard Pryor wrote the dialogue for that scene. And when it was first filmed, the scene had a white man walking in and believed that George was black. But Richard Pryor was very uncomfortable with that scene, felt it would be funnier if it was done as he wrote it. A black man walked in, is not fooled at all. Pryor went to the director, Arthur Hiller, and he said, no, I'm not going to shoot it again. And Pryor walked off the set and refused to return to filming until the scene was changed. And Hiller finally relented. And of course, his idea made the final cut. So there was somebody that was aware of what was going on in that
Well, yeah,
scene.
of course, Richard Pryor was aware of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not surprising that Richard Pryor was aware of it.
Right.
And good for him for going to the director and saying, look, this is, and even then he could only get it, changed so much.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a big risk too, because Pryor almost wasn't cast in this movie because he had recently walked off of another movie, one he did right before this, the Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings movie. And so, but from all, I don't know what the instance was that he walked off that set too.
Well, he was pretty well known for having substance abuse issues,
right.
Being difficult
for many,
to work
many
with
years by this point.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it could have been, in this case with Silver Streak, I think it was more of a, social issues that he had with the scene rather than, he was just out in his trailer getting high. Although he might have been doing that too.
Oh, most likely,
one
yes.
doesn't necessarily cancel out the other.
Yeah.
Mary, what's something else about Silver Streak that struck you when you watched it this time?
Wow. Actually, one of the things that I think I didn't notice as much the first couple of times I watched it was Patrick McGowan's performance as Devereaux. And he makes a pretty darn good villain.
Yes,
and
he does.
Is good, yes.
And I remember him. I went on a binge watch of The Prisoner a few years back, and if nobody's ever watched The Prisoner, you really should go watch it because it's pretty cool.
Oh, it's an amazing show.
Yeah, and that's where I really know him from. But yeah, he gives it's a very understated performance. But it actually, it works really well because you need somebody who's not, in that situation, who's not over the top. I'm glad they didn't do an over the top villain.
Yeah.
I think that would have ruined it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was awesome too, because you also got, you did get some of the overtop villains, with Ray Wiston, and you also had
Richard
Jaws.
Q.
Yeah, exactly. And everything. So you got the big over the top villains. But Patrick was so
worked that way
sedate
because they were sidekicks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it was so weird seeing My Favorite Martian as, as the hood. Oh, listen, see,
Yeah,
What
he
are
actually
you doing
seemed
back
like
on
he
this
was kind of
train?
doing almost a parody
of
that kind of character.
And even when I first saw the movie, I knew him from My Favorite Martian. So it was just like, and I had like with Jaws, I had not seen the James Bond movies at that point yet. So I didn't know who he was. And he was just some big guy who got hit with a spear gun. That was pretty awesome.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I was trying to remember whether he was in James Bond first or this.
I was surprised by that because I thought for sure he had done the role of Jaws before this because he has a metal grill, right? And he didn't really have that in real life. And so I was like, well, they're obviously banking on, his popularity from the first movie that he's in, because he's in two Bond movies, The Spy Who Loved Me. But The Spy Who Loved Me was filmed and released after this.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was the next year.
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they took the metal teeth from this movie for that, because that's obviously what he's known for. But because it doesn't seem like there's any real reason that he should have them in this movie.
No, they don't even really remark on them. They're just kind of there.
Yeah, there's one joke that I think Gene says about it, and that's about that's it, and then so I don't. Yeah, and he never uses them. I don't think he uses them to bite anything or, like he does when he's Jaws. So it is kind of a weird, but yeah, this is full of a lot of great character actors, which is always nice to see all of them pop up in this. Ned Beatty, Ray Walston, as you mentioned, Mike Scatman-Crothers, Valerie Curtin, Fred Willard, there's just, a bunch of folks in here that are just kind of cool to see. I think, because they all do really good jobs. Mike, what's something else about this movie that you liked?
It made me realize how really bad shots all these people were in this movie. Because it's like the shootout at with the train was so bad. It was like
Stormtroopers.
exactly. That's where George Lucas probably got the idea for, And so, but yeah, it was for me, this movie was really, really interesting, but it was also one of the things I hadn't noticed before was the cinematography in this movie was beautiful. The shooting of the Rocky Mountains, the shoot, or the desert, or wherever Gene Wilder's character got thrown off the train. It was always neat to get to see America at its finest, and it was beautiful. It was really, really well done, and it was neat to see the shots of the train as it was traveling the countryside and everything. That had to be done probably by helicopter at that time. And so there were some just great shots, and it really, I really liked that part. And there's just it was a fun thing. And then just the nonsense and the nonsensical, having all these convention guys on the train partying and everything.
Yeah,
It was
they
just
show
like
up at random moments.
exactly when you don't
I don't know if that
expect
was
it.
really used as much as I thought it was going to be. Like I think they pop up in like 2 scenes really after they're introduced, and I was like, I thought they were going to maybe factor more into this, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was interesting, and I just enjoyed the film, and I loved seeing a very, very young Fred Willard at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And which was awesome, and because I'm a huge fan of his, and and he played the typical, oh yeah, there's a disaster coming, sure, oh, my boss, he's on break, I'm the assistant, and and then, oh wait, you're telling the truth, oh my god, what do I do? And so it was pretty funny and everything, so it was cool. I enjoyed it.
The movie, of course, was mostly praised by mostly praised by critics, and including Roger Ebert loved it. Gene Siskel was not as kind. And
we're shocked why.
One thing that Gene pointed out was he called it a needlessly convoluted mystery yarn, which calls everyone's identity into question except Wilder's, which is, I don't know if it's a fair criticism, but it's certainly a interesting thing that, I mean, everybody is not who they say they are, except for, Gene Wilder's character and Richard Pryor's character.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes on to say that I'm not sure whether Claiborne's character, Secretary de Devereux, was in on the hustle from the beginning. And that is an interesting question, because at certain times she seems like she's in on it and other times she doesn't. So, and to be honest with you, I found her character pretty weak. I don't think I'm a huge Jill Claiborne fan anyway. I don't think I despise her by any means, but I just don't think like she adds much to it. And I don't, unfortunately, as typical as the roles were for women were at this time, I don't think she doesn't have any agency in this. As Mary pointed out, she gets smacked around and she does nothing. Like there's no sense of retribution on her part or anything like that. She never gets anything. She's just basically a reason for George to do what he does.
Yeah, she reminded me of a Doctor Who companion who
yeah, very much
doesn't
so,
get to do
actually.
Anything. It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Along for the ride.
Yeah.
Right.
There were
absolutely.
a couple times like it's like, because I hadn't seen this in years. There were a couple times like if it was a modern movie, when Gene Wilder's character, she would have been killed or something, oh yeah, we threw her off the train too.
Well, I'm glad
something
she
like
wasn't fridged, like
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. She's not Devereux's secretary though. She's Schreiner's secretary.
Well, we don't
Exactly.
really know what she is.
Well, no,
because
she says that.
No, she says
out.
she's the secretary that she
But
helped
do you
him
believe
work
her?
on. She worked on the book with him and everything.
Do you believe her?
Yeah.
Why? She's in with Devereaux.
Because she didn't do anything. I mean, there's nothing to indicate she's in with Devereaux.
I mean, she was in, I mean, you're led to believe, in some ways, I think, you know, I was looking at it, it was like possibly she was in from the beginning. Like she knew that, you know, what was going on in the beginning. She was covering up for her boss's death right from the very beginning. I think you can make that case anyway. I don't think the movie does. I don't think the movie cares.
I mean, we can at least say they didn't make it clear one way or another.
Right. Because like I said, I don't think the movie cares.
Yeah.
Like, because she's not important enough as a character for them to really give her defining moments like that.
She just gets shoved in the background.
Right. And in fact, you know, I think this movie has more of a bromance than a romance. This, I mean, once Pryor hits and they sort of bond, Wilder and Pryor bond, their characters bond, like there is a when after they both get thrown off the train, or they jump off the train, and end up in custody, and then are about to go their separate ways, there's this really like romantic scene where they're parting. Like it's really like neither one of them want to leave each other. And it feels really like it's shot like a romance. I mean, I noticed it. Did you guys notice that as well?
No, I noted. I did. No, I'll agree with you.
A little bit. I don't disagree with you.
I mean, I don't think they were.
I mean, there was certainly a lot of chemistry between them, and I can see.
I can
see where you're coming from. I mean, I don't think they cross a line.
No,
but they're definitely a heavy bromance.
But it's also interesting too because you know, Gene Wilder's character actually made gardening kind of sexy again. You know, so which is pretty cool.
Were you turned on by that, Mike? Is that what you're saying?
Well, the red curly hair, you know, kind of, you never know.
The carrot top.
Yeah, exactly. So, and
now,
let me tell you,
Richard Pryor's the sexiest guy in the movie.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
I would not have been surprised, like at the end of the movie, if you know Gene had like gone off with Pryor and left Clayburgh just standing in the lobby with the busted train, because it just seemed like I know that they didn't make this with that intention that they were creating this great comedy team, but of course they go on to make Stir Crazy after this, and that's a huge hit. I think, and they're both like in top form on that movie.
That's the one I always think of when I think of Wilder and Pryor.
Yeah. You think of them. What is it? The scene where they're strutting out like, "That's right, we bad." Like,
but I had forgotten. They don't give Clayburgh enough to do as a character, so they can't. I mean, how do you develop a romance, a believable romance between these two people when they don't give Clayburgh anything to do?
She was very two-dimensional in this, completely. And, you thought, when she, poured the drink down Ned Beatty's pants and everything, I thought, oh, she's going to be this, pretty, modern woman and everything like that. But nope.
But she, just the way that, they play that scene up, and, I don't know if, I just got the sense because she approaches George right from the get-go, and it's very reminiscent, and maybe it's my North by Northwest baggage that I'm bringing to it, because that's exactly what happens in North by Northwest, and the woman there is definitely working for the bad guy. And seducing.
It may have been more interesting if she was working for the bad guy.
Well, that's what maybe that's what the hope was. It's like,
it would have been great if she was the femme fatale or something like that.
Yeah,
that would have been awesome.
And then you could have had him going off, like him and Richard Pryor going off in the car at the end, because he realizes that the woman he loved betrayed him, so he's like, whatever. And then he and Richard Pryor can ride off into the sunset for more adventures.
Yeah, and then in that new car of Pryor's at the end.
Yes.
The yellow AMC. At least it wasn't a Pacer.
Well, we do get what are they riding around on? And when they go cross country, is that a Porsche?
That's a nice little Porsche.
Yeah.
Mm,
Man, it looks so weird. back then. What do you think of that, Ashley? When you see movies like this, is it like a time capsule for you? Because I imagine for Mike and Mary and myself, I mean, it's nostalgia. Like, we actually remember people sitting at tables with bottled Cokes of Tab, like, like. But I mean, this is all nostalgia for us. But what is it like for you to watch this thing with a sort of time capsule into the 70s?
No, I really like that aspect of watching older films, because how cool is it to get a window into a time and place? And some people think details like that, oh, that makes a film dated, but I don't think so, because it's depicting a potential like current time and place. And whereas, like, if people watch an Avengers movie 20 years from now, I mean, it'll still be a great adventure, but doesn't really give you an idea of what life is actually like in 2023. But for here, like, you get a sense of like the different clothes, the styles, the way that people behaved. And again, like we were talking about, some of the humor, which wouldn't be used today, but that was kind of what people used back then. So it's just interesting to track cultural change. So that is one of my favorite aspects of watching classic movies, is just getting to see how things have changed, but also how certain things have stayed the same. Like, it's great to see lines that were funny then and they're still funny now because they're timeless. So yeah, I really like that aspect of getting to see older films.
Mary and Mike, I'll put this to you. Like, so is Silver Streak a pretty good representation for what life was like in 1976?
Well, yes and no. I mean, maybe not the murder on the train so much, but certainly there are details in there that, I mean, I agree with Ashley. I would not want it to be, would you call it time washed? I like seeing those little details because it really sets you in that period. And this is a period piece. I mean, it is very much of its time. It is definitely has, feels like the 70s. I would not want to lose that about it.
Exactly. It was a true throwback. And seeing the telephones, even that, were the rotary phones, seeing the pay phones, seeing, people, the gift shops with some of the stuff in it. And it was all like what we grew up with. And so, yeah, it was a true throwback. And the cars, and even the helicopters, and the things you had in this were right out of it. And it wasn't like there wasn't a lot that made me go, oh, that I don't get it anymore, or I don't relate to that anymore. And that's what was good about this movie is the bad guys would be more evil, twisting mustaches. Now it would become something more like Bullet Train was than if it was made today. And I loved what they did with this and everything. And,
because
I still enjoyed it.
For, people getting murdered quite a lot in this movie, and a lot of threats of violence and everything like that. The stakes are pretty low, really, compared to like big plots, villainous plots. I mean, it's just he wants to, the bad guy wants to discredit another guy, and then it's, his reputation is online for authenticating these Rembrandts. It's not like, life or death stakes for millions of people in this, right? But it is very much a, I think a sort of Deborah represents in some ways like the one percenters, and I think Gene and them are, and Gene is like a middle class, and of course Richard Pryor is lower class, so you get this class struggle here. I think you can look at it that way. I mean, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that, but I mean, I certainly think that it's interesting that it's there.
Well, I think that's true, and I think it's interesting that those same struggles are still going on.
Oh yeah.
It's definitely still relatable.
Yeah, unfortunately in this case, right?
Yes.
It's not like we would look at it and go, man, remember when people like fought for this kind of stuff? It's like, no, it's still going on,
But this, I mean, you can go back to the beginning of story with this. This is a hero's journey. You know,
Yeah.
this is a plot that has been around for thousands of years. And it is, to me, it's always fascinating. But I mean, it doesn't matter that it's a hero's journey, and that's a trope we all know, because what's important is the way it's presented.
Mhm.
And that's actually, you know, another argument for that it's good that it's a product of its time, because then you get to see what perspectives were like in that time period.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And something else that I appreciate about older films is the absence of cell phones. I feel like there's a lot more you can do with suspense and storytelling when people don't just have a phone they can pull up and call
Yes,
somebody else
that's a
with,
good
like,
point.
yeah, if George tossed off the train, he pulls out his cell phone. He's got an Uber coming to pick him up, but it's a lot funnier and more
Right.
interesting if he has to go around and finds this farm and tries to get a ride. So
And have to milk a
that's,
cow. And, you know,
yeah,
you played with
right.
those
Like
before. Yeah.
that wouldn't happen today. So I enjoy some of the storytelling freedom that creators back then had, because people didn't have these tools, instant problem solving tools.
Oh, everyone would
Yeah.
be around at the train station. Instead of running away from it, they'd be there with their cell
Oh,
phones,
right, like
taking
filming
pictures.
it, like, hey, look, I'm
Exactly.
streaming live on TikTok.
Or doing selfies and everything with it, and like, yeah, going,
Yeah.
look at this, you know.
Absolutely. That's funny.
And so, yeah, that's a big difference about it. I don't know. I think we might have dumbed down quite a bit since that.
Yeah. So it's
Well,
kind of depressing.
The phones have gotten smarter and we've gotten dumber. Is that what you meant? Yeah, and I think we're still having problems adjusting to cell phones and telling stories with cell phones, because how many times do you watch something and they're like, oh, I can't get a signal here?
Yep.
It's because they can't
Yes,
figure out a way
yes.
to work it in that he's got a cell
Right.
phone. Like, so
Mhm.
so you don't have to worry about that with this, which is kind of fun. So anything else you wanted to mention about this movie? See this experience, Ashley?
Well, just a quick little shout out that I thought was fun. I like the train and the fact that it's going cross country. You hear some less common stations. As a lifelong Kansan, I was real excited to hear shout outs to Dodge City and Kansas City, two cities I've been in that don't get mentioned in movies very often. So I was pretty excited.
Yeah. They're racing to get to Kansas City.
Yes, yeah, it's not often that you get to see a city in Kansas be a significant plot point in a thriller. So I was pleased with that little reference.
Did you recognize any spots when they were driving through the farmlands and everything?
So, well, I have to admit, a lot of the farmland does somewhat look similar. So they could have filmed it in Kansas.
Sorry
They
to
could have
know.
filmed
I
it
know.
elsewhere. Like, I love you, Kansas, but the truth is the Great Plains kind of look similar. But yeah, it's just kind of fun to see different settings, because I feel like a lot of times these thrillers are in like New York or big cities. So it was kind of cool to see the going to different locations. Again, the challenge with that, like he gets tossed off the train in the middle of nowhere. He's not near a big city, so he has to be resourceful and find a way out of that. So yeah, that was just a little detail that made me smile.
I think it was actually filmed mostly in Canada, so I don't know if there's actually any. I don't know if there's actually any Midwest actually represented, but it is kind of cool.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, it was. I appreciated the shout out nonetheless.
Saskatchewan is a Midwest of Canada. It's okay.
True.
It's like a lot of science fiction shows where every planet is Vancouver.
Oh, I know. Like, I love Stargate Atlantis dearly, but every planet looks like Canada.
Anything else you wanted to mention about Silver Streak, Mary?
Just that if you're looking for something that's a really good balance of comedy and drama, which I think is something that is hard to do, and that we do not necessarily get a lot of these days. I mean, I know it happens sometimes, but they tend to lean more one way or another. And I think this one, the way they worked in the comedic bits into the drama, it's seamless. I mean, it all works really well together. It makes sense within the story. And so I would highly recommend it just for that alone, for people to watch it.
That's as a do you guys recommend people check out Silver Streak?
Oh God, yes.
Oh yeah,
Very
I
much
would
so.
say yes.
Did we succeed, Ashley? That's what we needed to know.
Yes. No, I think that it is well worth people's time to watch, again, for the uniqueness of the comedy and drama and the idea of a movie made in the late 70s. So yeah, if you're looking for some classic movies, and it's nice, it's one that I feel like there are certain standard movies and people say, oh, go watch a classic movie like Casablanca or Gone with the Wind, things like that. But it's nice to expand beyond that too. Like there are other movies that were made in the past that are worth your time as well. So I think it's good for people to go check out.
Yeah,
that's cool.
There's a lot of really cool things in this. Mike, any sort of final words on final thoughts on Silver Streak for you?
No, if you're into, mid-70s adventure, comedy, drama, definitely worth checking out. And, it is, you'll probably, like we've said many times already, a lot of shows and movies have imitated it, but this is the first one that really did, like, and it's the first time Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder are together, and you'll see the birth of the chemistry they have together. So definitely worth checking out. And it's available on Amazon Prime, so definitely check it out. It's like $2 or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is their first outing, and if you're curious about the team up between the two, this one and then the subsequent movie that they made, Stir Crazy, I think are the peaks. I think the last two are not as good. I don't even think I saw the last one that they did. And I think Hear No Evil, See No Evil has some moments, but the concept of that is hilarious, actually. But I don't know if the execution is really.
That's a whole
good,
different story.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I just wanted to also point out that I mentioned this earlier, but because I mentioned that I was surprised that Richard Kiel was not already Jaws before this, but we do get a Bond character represented in this too, because Clifton James, if he's not Sheriff Pepper, he's darn close to Sheriff Pepper in this movie. Like, and he had done already 2 Bond movies as that character before he did this. So this is really kind of still, I don't know, maybe it can kind of cross over to the Bond universe.
He could also
get on that.
Yeah, but he'd also be the same character that he was in Cool Hand Luke and everything too. So.
Maybe Richard Kiel's character survived and became Jaws.
Maybe that's why he needed the teeth work even more so.
That sheriff character turns up in like 85% of 70s movies.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. The henchman is not a new concept at all. Yeah, this doesn't really invent anything, but it does it really well, as you guys have already pointed out. What it does well. It's like it's cool. If you like movies like North by Northwest or anything with Gene Wilder in it, actually, this is a really great movie for him. So it's not one that he wrote or directed. One of the few during this era where he didn't write and direct, but it's still pretty good. What he does with the material that he's given, I think is pretty solid. So I appreciate it, Mike. This was, to be honest with you, I was like, why is he picking Silver Streak? And then once I watched it, I'm like, now I know why he picked Silver Streak, because it's pretty good. I had forgotten how good it was. So
yes. Wait till you see
and it is worth
one.
watching. Despite some of the scenes that might make you feel uncomfortable at times.
Exactly.
So check it out. Silver Streak, 1976. Well, cool. I don't know what we have next on the agenda for classic viewing, but I'm sure we'll be able to squeeze one in sometime soon. I know we're about to get inundated with summer movies pretty soon, but we'll try to make time for something classic along that run as well. So very cool. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to bring back the Con Report.
That's right. All right, YouTube people, we'll talk to you guys real quick with this one. We have, thinking about other classic movies of this era, what, Ashley, how many, like, do you think of the 70s as classics now? We're putting you on the spotlight on this little break here. You know,
I would
'cause-
say yes. But it's interesting also when I hear of movies in the 70s, my mind automatically goes to 1977 Star Wars and New
Of
Hope,
course.
which is one of my all-time favorite movies. So, but it's cool to see something completely different from that, which was happening at the same time. And I feel like I focus a lot on like science fiction as a film reviewer. So it's nice to get some things that push me into a slightly different genre.
Have you ever watched like the Towering Inferno or the Poseidon Adventures, those type of movies?
I have not.
Ooh.
But I do enjoy a good disaster movie.
We need to get you to watch some disaster movies.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were pretty prevalent around this time.
Earthquake, or
There's a lot of them.
Irvin Allen was in full form during this time.
Exactly. So yeah, and it's like it's in most of those movies, it's like a who's who of the B-rated celebrity field of who's in those movies too, and everything, which is it's really awesome. So,
have you seen Logan's Run?
I don't think so.
Because that's another one.
That is another good one
that I often
check
think
out.
around this era. That is not Star Wars.
Yes, yeah.
But still science fiction.
So that's pretty cool. So we definitely have a lot. I could keep on listing stuff if you want.
Oh,
so,
sure.
Yeah. Have you ever seen actually the original Battlestar Galactica movie that they did?
No.
Oh. Well, Mr. Mike, I think we might have our next one for her.
It might be. I'm a Galactica fan from day one, man. That's a show and a movie that I love more than most things I should probably.
So I think that might be our next one to be put on the list. So awesome. So awesome, you two people. Thank you as always. I think as we got next coming up is our little con report. You ready, Mr. Mike?
Go ahead.
All right. All right, our Station One people. It's the return of the con report.
Wow, it's been over 3 years.
Wow.
It's been a while. It has been a while since we've done the con report.
Because I mean, even though we've been to cons, but this was a big one. So a big new experience for you guys. So I'm anxious to hear all about it.
It was awesome. Mary and I actually this last weekend went down to Pensacola, Florida, and it was the 10th annual Pensacon. They were celebrating their 10th year, but they were also celebrating the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who.
Yay.
And they had 13 Doctor Who guests this year,
which is awesome.
Yep. The only one, they actually were supposed to be 14, but Catherine Tate had a project she was working on that she couldn't come to the States and everything. So, you know, it was interesting to see and meet. We got to see Paul McGann. Peter Davison was in full regalia for all his pictures and everything. And it was awesome. Sylvester McCoy was there. Colin Baker was there. Let's see, Chris Eccleston came in for Saturday. He was there for one day. He came for one day. But it was awesome. And we also, got quite a few of the companions. You had Perry, you had Tegan. Yeah, you had Tegan, and then you had Ace. And who else? And then we had Eric Roberts, the Master, and then we also had Grace Holloway from Daphne Ashbrook. And so we actually only did 2 of the panels for going to see Doctor Who guests, because they were in the same building we were doing the panels at. Pensacon's a very interesting con. It's very spread out, where Dragon Con's within the 5 hotels, and then the America's Mart, which is all walkable. Not so much for Pensacon. They actually have shuttles that have to take you places and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, they simply don't have the space.
No, there is not enough space.
City.
Exactly. They have what they call the Bay Center, which is where concerts are at, or the hockey team plays there, and they have basketball and stuff. That's the arena where on the floor where the ice ring is, that's where the vendor hall is. That is literally it for the vendor hall. And then the upper ring where the 200 level is, that's where Artist Alley is, up there.
Yeah. And celebrity tables are up there.
Up there too, in another section. And it was real interesting to see. And then they have different places where they have panels, or they have the celebrity panels and such. And that is, they have like different shuttle buses that'll take you to the parking lots, or they'll take you around Pensacola, because there's like 6 different stops, and it's just real interesting to see. And we actually had 3 panels over the weekend that were official ESO panels. And then we also sat in with our friend Christian, who does the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS podcast. We actually sat in for his Doctor Who panel also. How do you make a Whovian? And so that was on Friday that we did. And then Saturday in the morning, we did Doctor Who, Doctor Who past and what's coming up. And we had a standing room only room for that one.
We had the best audience.
That was one of the best.
They were awesome.
They were amazing to see and everything. And then Saturday early evening, we did a Sandman panel. And
that was a lot of fun too.
That was a really nice discussion and everything. And I think in between that, we also got to see John Barrowman.
Barrowman was Barrowman. He was a total blast.
He
came
wonderful.
Out in his sparkly TARDIScape and his almost like a Liberace type outfit.
And then he stripped it off, and he was wearing, of all things, a TARDIS hockey jersey with rhinestones all over it.
Yes, a very sparkly hockey jersey.
Oh yeah, and his panel was not for the faint of heart, as always, and it was awesome and everything. But he was great. And then on Sunday, we actually had a wonderful panel. So you want to start a podcast? And it was myself, Mary, and our friend Tyra Burton doing the panel. And we had probably about 15, 20 people in there.
Yeah, something like that. A good group of everyone who wanted, most of whom had not done a podcast before her, had only done a few episodes. There was really only one in there who had a lot of experience. And yeah, it was really fun listening to different perspectives, and
we even learned a couple things from them and everything.
We did. We learned a couple things from. I learned from Tyra, the marketing queen.
Oh, she is amazing. She really, really is amazing. And so it was a blast. And thank you to the fine folks at Pensacon. They put on an amazing show, and I enjoyed it so much that I'm really considering, coming back for next year, for 2024. And they've already announced some anime guests already and such. So it's, they're definitely doing it. So, and, it's only, 4.5, 5 hours by car. It's, it's just hop, skip, and a jump.
Only 2.5 to 3 hours for me. So not bad at all.
Exactly. And it's right on the beach, folks. That's, there's a reason why they call it the Bay Center, because it's right on the water, basically. And it is gorgeous down there. It really, really is.
Yeah, I highly recommend you stay in Pensacola Beach if you go.
Yes, very much so. It's, the city is nice, but the beach is gorgeous. The beach is totally gorgeous. So we had a blast. So total thumbs up, and thank you to doing it. Oh, also give a quick shout out. I actually met my old podcasting partner there. I haven't seen him in over 12 years. I met West Hubbard, whose podcast I was on before I started ESO. And I haven't seen West in probably over 12 years. And he was he's like the assistant to the guy who's creating doing the panels and everything. And he was helping with guests and everything. And we recognized each other. It was the first time we actually met in person. And and it was awesome and everything, because he lives down that way. And, and so it was great to catch up with him. And it was a good time to see him. I saw him like almost every day. We kept on running into each other, and it's cool. And so it was a lot of fun. So definitely recommend if you get a chance, Pensacon, worth your stop, folks.
Very nice. Very nice. And I think our next scheduled appearance is SC Comic Con coming up pretty soon next month, I think.
Yep. And we did see Robert and his lovely wife, Michelle, at the con. So they had a table set up in the vendor hall, and we actually ended up having dinner right next to them. And we didn't even realize it till we were done and everything. So it was like, what are you guys following us? That kind of thing. So
they're good people, awesome. And that should be a good time.
Oh, it should be. South Carolina Comic Con, mid-April in Greenville, South Carolina is the next appearance of ESO.
Awesome.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll be back in a minute to close up the show. It was awesome, though. When we were at the con, I walked up to Robert's table and said, I have to come all the way to Florida Panhandle to come see you? And he looked at me and came back right away and said, well, if you came to the shop when I'm there, you would be able to. And everything. So it was really good.
He posted pictures of Dan Housing shopping at his booth, and I thought that was fun.
Mm-hmm. It was awesome. He was couldn't stop talking about that. We had a wrestler come in totally unexpected. It was cool.
Yeah. I saw Mark Heffernan got a picture with a lot of the AEW folks.
Yep. We saw Mark at our Doctor Who panel.
Nice.
So it was awesome. He was dressed as Jody.
Yep.
And and it was awesome. He was only there for like a day and a half, I think, or something, because he was leaving early because he had taken time off because he was at Gallifrey also. So we got to talk to him for that. Let's close up the show tonight, folks. You ready?
Yep.
All right. 3. Are you guys ready to get out of here? Thank you guys for listening to the Earth Station 1 podcast. It was a ton of fun to talk to everyone tonight. Before we get out of here, we do have a little bit of sad news we have to bring up. Contributor to the show, friend of the show, friend of all of us, Darren Nowell, who has been with us since episode 6 of the podcast. So that's over 12 years almost, folks, that he has, sadly enough, passed away. And I know that might take surprise to us, surprise to you at home. We found out really crazily last Tuesday, right before we were supposed to record the Dragon Con report. And that's why the Dragon Con report was put on hold last week. And we're surviving. And Darren was a very good friend. He was, whenever you met him, he lit the room. Literally, he was the life of the party, and he will be missed. He was a friend personally, and I will miss him. I will miss everything he represented. His memory will go on. We're not stopping the LGBTQ, segment. We're going to keep it going. And, I just want us to, remember the good things about him. And, we'll do a toast on the Dragon Con report. We're going to be doing that. It'll probably be out to folks, a couple days after this. But you know what? We're also going to be dedicating an episode in a couple weeks to Darren and talking about it. We'll have some of his friends up. We'll have some, folks, we'll have ways for you to leave messages so we can read them on the air and stuff like that. We're going to try to make it as interactive and have as many people involved as possible. But it's weird. This is really the first of our crew that we've lost. And that's a pretty good run for over almost 13 years of doing a podcast. So just be thankful for what you have, folks. Just always remember about it, because you never know when it's going to be taken from you. Darren, you're going to be missed, and we loved you. That's the best thing.
And if you don't mind, can I just add that seeing everybody out there who loved him as well, and who couldn't, right? And one thing that's been particularly moving to me, that I just, because we do these shows and we have a lot of fun, but we don't know sometimes what impact it has. But it's amazing to me how many people knew Darren because they listened to our show. and because I listen to the Dragon Con Report. And if I do nothing else in this world, the fact that I have been part of something that's introduced a lot of people to a guy like Darren makes me so proud. So I am proud to have that legacy and be part of that. And I am proud to have known him.
Exactly. I know the fine folks over also at the Legion of Substitute Podcasters is going to be doing something for Darren also. So please check that out also. And, I want to just thank you guys for listening to the podcast, being with us. You guys are our family also. So thank you. We love you guys. And let's thank Mr. Mike. Thank you for being here tonight.
As always, it's my pleasure.
Ashley, always nice to have you on the show and educating you. It's awesome.
Yes,
it's
thank you.
Thing.
It's a great crew of people and no one I'd rather talk movies with. I
appreciate you more than you could ever know. And of course, Ms. Mary Ogle, my roommate for the weekend. It was awesome.
What a wonderful time we had.
Thank you so much
for having me on. And thank you, awesome. Darren, because I don't always get to talk gay issues and gay themes with people who really understand. And for when Darren made me a part of the LGBT broadcast, it was really special, and I'll miss him forever.
I agree with that completely. Folks, we're not going to do the whole usual closing stuff. It's not appropriate. Just feedback at ourstation1.com. Definitely would love to hear from you guys. Till next time, my name's Mike Faber. We'll see you. Hug your loved ones, be thankful, and we will be good. Peace. And we are done. Boom. Later, Gators.